want me over here?
Yes, right there. Have a seat. So we're going to show a trailer or something that you guys
called it My Name is Dick. The show is actually called I Love Dick, which is very hard for Kara Swisher to say out loud.
Yeah.
It's true. That's all I can. That's all I can figure out how she got it wrong.
I just say I love Dick Costello. Okay. All right. Well done. Right. All right. Show the video.
Dear Dick, how did we not know each other before now? My husband has a residency.
He's one of Dick's new fellows.
Dick's new fellow.
I don't find you interesting. Not now. Not ever.
Silver says he is so turned on by you.
Well, you got my attention.
Looks fantastic.
Thanks.
Okay. So let's get into the show itself. But I want to go back a little bit about how you got to Amazon. And you and I have had very interesting discussions about, I keep saying you should be paid for the paper towels you sell.
Every towel.
Every towel you sell. But talk about how you got into it, because you were a creator in a regular Hollywood fashion. And you're one of the first to really break out, along with House of Cards. There were a couple of others.
Yeah, well, I had been working in television for maybe 10 years or so, and I was kind of always hitting that ceiling on the TV shows I was working on. I was just to the left or just to the right of the creator, and couldn't really get my own show sold. And
what was the problem? Which shows were you working on?
I worked on 6 Feet Under, obviously, United States of Terror, Grey's Anatomy, How to Make It in America. And yeah, I had learned enough that they were starting to call me a veteran TV writer, and they would bring in sort of new people who had a great idea, and they would pair me with them, and so I would teach people how to do television, and every year I would have 2 or 3 pilots and would pitch them, and they never got made.
Because why?
Well, there were unlikable female protagonists, possibly. Transparent was the first time that I had a female protagonist played by a man, so that could be why I became successful.
Perhaps.
Yeah, but to be less jokey about trans issues, my own parent came out as trans about maybe 6 years ago, and very shortly after, like a good 2 or 3 seconds into the phone call, I started planning the TV show.
Okay. Everything is copy, as Nora.
This was one where I was like, maybe I have not been successful in television yet because I haven't had the right idea. Maybe this is the right idea.
Right, okay.
And
did you say this to your?
I didn't say it on the phone to my parent, no. I said, I'm happy for you, I love you, I support you. I did not say I will be monetizing this into a program. I left that out.
Left that out, right.
And yeah, I would say, the show started writing itself. It was a family whose parent comes out at trans at the age of 70 is crazy in real life, and it's great for television as well. So I had relationships at HBO and Showtime.
Right.
I almost felt like HBO was my college. I worked on 6 Feet Under, and I prepared my pitch, and I went around to. I actually wrote the pilot. I spec'd the pilot on the advice of my agent. He said, "Go ahead and write the whole thing. You'll go and have a meeting at each of the the big networks, and then we'll send them the written script." And I kind of went around to all of the usual suspects, to HBO, to Showtime. Netflix was around at the time. I talked to FX. And then there was this sort of, would you like to pitch it to Amazon? And
So what happened at the first ones? Because that's where you originally wanted to do this.
I think, HBO was like, we'll think about it. Showtime was like, we'll get back to you. FX had a trans show in development with Ryan Murphy that ended up they didn't want to do both at the same time. That ended up not happening. I think Netflix had Orange at the time, and they felt like everybody had their reason why it wasn't the right time for this show at this network with me. And so my agent talked about Amazon, and there were no shows, so I was like, what will happen? How will Amazon have a TV show? I actually thought that you would be clicking on a product in the TV show and buying it while you were watching it.
Right, okay. So you were dubious.
I was quite dubious.
Because you were going to do a web series of it, right?
No, I thought that it was, when I told people I had sold the show to Amazon, I was sort of like, I think I might have a web series. I don't know what it is.
Okay.
I don't know what it's going to be. And I think I didn't really understand Amazon's ambitions in content and how things would evolve year to year to year. I mean, I think a year later when we were nominated for a Golden Globe, I really realized that we were, on the playing field. I just kind of never thought we would be on the same playing field, so that was really exciting.
So what was the meeting like? Who did you
To Joe Lewis. I pitched to Joe Lewis and Sarah Babineau and Kristen Zollner, and all of my meetings at all of the places were very casual, and because I knew everybody, and guess what happened in my real life, and let me tell you my story.
So when you sold it to Amazon, you were hoping for, wasn't like your last ditch thing, but you were hoping for just to get it made. And did they allow you to be, is there a different, I want to talk a little bit about the difference of making for a Netflix, Amazon, Google /
Well, one thing happened at the deal stage with them that really helped me to, make the decision, which was they said, and I don't know if they would ever do this again, but at the time, maybe because they were building their business, they said, if we don't end up picking it up, you can have the footage, the half hour back, and it could be the first part of a movie, as long as you give us, right of first refusal on the movie. So in my mind, I had just come out of Sundance and had just made my first feature, and so in my mind, okay, I'll use this money from this shopping company to shoot 30 minutes.
Right.
And we'll see what happens from there. And if worse comes to worse, because I felt like I wasn't going to have another great idea this big. Most studios, if you sell your idea to them, you can't get it back unless you pay a lot of money.
Right, exactly. And so they were going to give it back to you.
They were going to give it back.
Give it back to you.
Yeah.
Which was, what did you say to them? You were like, what?
I was like, great.
Yeah.
If they don't, that made it worth it for me.
And you then made it, did they bother you at all, or did they not call you? One of the things we were talking about is how they didn't interface with you that much.
Joe Lewis, they were around, but they have a very different style than most networks, and I don't really know how things work at Netflix. I imagine it's a little bit the same, but because they're using these kind of disruptive technologies, they don't really have the same tradition about, let's put a stop to things at the outline stage, at the script stage, they really don't weigh in over and over and over again. And after developing for 10 years with networks, I was doing a lot of rewriting simply, I would do some political rewriting all the time just to make people happy. I was working with groups of people and I wanted them all on board, and so somebody would have a note and I would go through and take a pass, just the way you iterate any project. And slowly but surely everything turned into something that I didn't really believe in. And your vision kind of gets dissipated. And none of that happened at Amazon.
Give me an example of that, like something you changed, or for the minutes too, right? A lot of people tell me they have to do something for the minutes. It doesn't really matter how many minutes.
Yeah, well, it wasn't really minutes. I just felt like, I wrote 2 or 3 pilots a year, and often got the note that your main character is unlikable. And you need to have a rootable male at the center of your show. You can't have an unlikable woman, holding down a show. We can't root for her.
Rootable, meaning?
Rootable.
Okay, rootable.
Yes,
okay, all right.
That we root for her.
Right, okay.
And you can't root for a woman who's, sexual or odd. The fact that the show I Love Dick is about Chris Kraus, and it's about her kind of losing it, that couldn't have happened, without Girls, without Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, without Lady Dynamite. These are all shows that inspire, I think as women see other shows created by women that allow the main characters to be kind of off. We get to take part in these traditions that people, like Tony Soprano or Walter White, you don't really get to have nutty women, and that's kind of new.
Because there's plenty of those. So when you're developing for them, they don't give you that many notes. Have they started to do that? Have they gone Hollywood?
Not with me, maybe with other creators, but I have a great relationship with Joe Lewis, who's my sort of day-to-day person. And the good thing about what he does is we have conversations, and we talk about the big things, the big story arcs over the course of a season, the big idea behind things. We don't really get the little there's a period on this page instead of a comma. I think it should be a comma. There's none of that kind of micromanaging. And I do look at Amazon's leadership principles and the ways in which their ethos about how they deal with all of their suppliers. A lot of those things make sense for me in television, so that's great.
So do you spend a lot of time with Jeff Bezos talking about this?
We hang out all the time. We live together, we sleep together, we shop online together. We're deep in it.
Okay. What is your?
No, he's great. We've hung out quite a few times, and I always love hanging out with him. He's fantastic.
And what do you think his ambitions here? Because he bought the Washington Post. He's doing this.
Yeah, I asked him that question once. I said, Jeff, what are you doing?
Right. Yes.
We were at the Golden Globes, and we had lost. This was the second time or the third time.
There he's in a tux.
Yes, and we're hanging out together, and there's like an hour and a half left of an awards show where I have nothing invested any longer.
Right.
And I thought, I'll do some WWJD questions with Jeff Bezos. I'll ask him a few questions. And one of the questions I asked him is, I'm obsessed with a sort of a movement for women, people of color, queer people, an intersectional power movement. I think about revolution all the time. How do I square that with my TV and filmmaking ambitions? And he said they're the same thing. The way that you make change with story, the way that story can make change is so much faster than the way politics can make change. You create culture that has story in it that says, for example, something as radical as trans people are people, and then laws follow. And that was exciting to hear from him, that I was really, that I could do what I was doing and still have my ambitions about making the world a better place. And then I said, I asked the question, what do you do? What is it actually you are doing day to day? How are you possibly managing this amount of innovation?
Right.
And he said, I love seeing people I care about succeed. And I've kind of taken that to heart, where I like to share some of the things I've learned about story, about process, about drama, about writing, and help other people, showrunners, directors, writers, editors, especially women, people of color, and queer people who haven't had access to the storytelling tools.
You're doing through Topple.
And the name of the company is Topple, because we're trying to topple the patriarchy, the global patriarchy.
How's that working?
Kofifi, that's all I can say.
You had a good explanation.
I did last night, as I was getting ready to go to bed, Kofifi happened. And I was like, I can't go to bed unless I tweet something about Kofifi. And finally I tweeted, first turn off your phone, then take your Ambien, if not Kofifi.
And I think you're 100% right.
I think that's what happened.
I think that's what happened.
You turn your phone off first.
Yes.
Then you take your Ambien.
Yes.
If you do it the other way around, Kofifi happens.
Okay. Okay. So in this happy, shiny discussion with Jeff Bezos, one of the things is, though, your show broke through for them the way House of Cards did for Netflix.
I keep trying to tell him that.
Yes, I know. And Handmaid's Tale has done fantastic thing. Do you feel like you're owed more? Did you go to him and say, now I would like the Amazon stock and I'd like a VIG from every paper towel sale?
I went to him like Veruca Salt and saying, I want the world. I want the whole world. I feel like they treat me amazingly, and I get all of the respect and love I could possibly want at this point from Amazon. I feel very well taken care of, and I haven't done the stock, computation yet. Like, should I be asking for stock, and how much should I be asking for? And if I had 4 years ago, now what would I be doing?
Right.
I don't think I ever want to do that. Yeah.
Right. Except that I would imagine Transparent added value to Amazon. It gave it it burnished it, the Golden Globes.
Yes.
It got them in the content business.
Yeah.
So where's Jill's?
Where's my? What do you want? You want me to have stock?
Yeah, or something. Do you think about that? I don't know. I could talk to other people here about that. But
Guys, how much stock should I have?
Right. Do creators think like that? Because you have.
Yeah, we had this conversation.
Yeah, we did.
About selling your content.
I made you feel
versus,
insecure about that.
Yeah, well, because it's a new world, in terms of not only owning your content, but having a piece of the platform.
Right.
The distribution platform. Yeah, I'm happy to have an unbridled amount of creative freedom. Besides Transparent and I Love Dick, I get to think up other TV shows. I'm in business with them on movies. We have ideas about VR. It's just a sort of matter of how quickly I can scale the business so that I can still be present on the set to direct sometimes, still write some scripts because I love doing that, but also have my big ambition about.
But what I want to get at is there should be a new economic contract between creators and distribution platforms, because it's not going to be like several people have said it's going to be Amazon, Google, Apple, and Netflix and others.
I feel that because Topple has its own brand, which is that kind of world changing, will it change the world? Has it ever been done before? Those are the questions I ask when I read a script. And that's what Topple wants to do, is kind of upset the gaze, the white male gaze that says we have had, white men have had control of what we're looking at forever, is the kind of thing we want to upset at Topple, meaning that women have the camera, people of color have the camera, and queer people have the camera. And that, to me, is enough of a brand within Amazon and a media brand that I'm excited to just kind of keep moving in the relationship I have with them. I don't feel like I need to necessarily.
But you think about so it's a power. You have now more power. You're trading for that you would in a Hollywood situation.
Yes. I don't know what would be happening if I had created. I feel like I've in some ways left behind the kind of network thinking. I talked to my agent and say, what are you up to? He's like, I'm at Upfronts. Remember those? Picking up shows. Is my show getting picked up? And staffing season and all of these things, they're a distant memory for me. I do think of myself more as a media brand, or Topple as a media brand, and that I love creating content. I love being on the set, talking to the actors, directing, but I also love thinking in a bigger way about how to share some of the stuff we're doing with more people.
Do you try to tell other Hollywood creators, get out of North Korea, or what? What do you think?
I don't.
Or you want to just stay there and I'll be fine?
Yeah, I don't really know much of what's going on with other creators. We have so many amazing people that we're attempting to bring up through the ranks. As I said, women, especially women of color, trans people. We've gotten probably 3 or 4 trans people into the DGA in the past year. Trans people into the Writers Guild. Changed the Writers Guild union regarding trans healthcare. So the work we're doing by taking one person at a time and bringing them into these positions, writer, director, producer, and allowing them their own protagonism, so that they can create their own stories about their lives,
and
to me is
what I'd love you to
enough.
finish up talking about a little bit is this idea. You gave a speech at Makers that I thought was so striking. I found it really interesting. It was very funny also. Lean in versus what you think is more important. Can you go?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that we're always doing as artists at Topple is attempting to hold space. That's what I'm kind of always talking about, is holding space. That holding space is, I think a few years ago, before I really was willing to interrogate my own ideas about gender, I thought of holding space as a feminine thing. That women or cis women have a uterus, or the moon, or pregnancy, or mothering, and that holding space was a way that women could come to the world of business equipped with some qualities that they already had. I wanted to tell women, you already know how to do this, you already know how to lead. Holding space is a very feminine quality, and it really is almost all you need to lead. To not come in with a real plan about this is how the TV show is going to go, this is how the scene is going to go, but instead hold space for what's happening with the actors, with the other artists. And really that just means very specifically standing with my feet planted when I'm on the set and allowing myself to feel what's happening in the scene.
And watching versus.
It's not even watching, it's feeling. It's feeling. I mean, a lot of directors back in the day, when I would be on shows like 6 Feet Under and I would watch the directors come, they'll come and they'll stand at the monitor, they'll watch a take like this. And they'll kind of have this body language, and then when the actor gets it right, they'll swing a bat, like something got hit. And so I sometimes just go up to people and I pull their shoulders back and I have them, just kind of stand there, because I'm wanting them to hold space to feel what's happening in the scene, so that they can respond to it. And I think early on I thought that was a very feminine and feminist thing to do. And then I think in the past year, I started to look at male privilege, and that's what I spoke about here at Makers, and talked about that it can be very masculine to hold space. And I kind of stood like a guy who's kind of got it all, just like, you lead with your tummy. Just walk into the room with your belt down here and just kind of hold space. And
women don't do that.
Yeah, patriarchal privilege, right? Anybody can do it. Just stick your stomach out. It's like pregnant women and really successful old guys. They lead with a big tummy, and I started to realize this isn't feminine or feminist. It can be both feminine and masculine. It's ungendered. It's about something bigger. And I think that's what I'm working on now, is how to move past an idea of, well, this is what women need to do, and this is a woman-only space, and this is how women lead, and instead talk about how humans can lead with a real awareness of a balance, a balanced masculine and feminine.
And you're also able to tell better stories in these internet environments, it seems like.
I think, I feel free to really tune into what the Pfeffermans want. They seem real to me, these characters. And I can really feel my way to what the next episode is, what the next scene is, what the next beat is, and the same thing with I Love Dick. It's
All right, can you explain this plot very briefly, and then we'll get to questions.
Oh, I Love Dick?
Yeah.
Well, there's a real woman, her name is Chris Kraus, and she was married to a man named Sylvain Lotringer, and they became obsessed with a cultural critic named Dick Hebdage. He he probably invented the field of cultural theory. He was like the first guy to say the Beatles are, you can do academia about the Beatles. And so they went out to dinner with him one night, and she became obsessed with him. And she started writing him love letters. She started writing Dick love letters in real life. And Dick said, leave me alone, you crazy bitch. Stop sending me these letters. And Chris and her husband, Sylvain, said, oh, Dick's response letters are part of the art. It's all the art project. Our letters to him, her husband got involved, which I think is a strange plot twist, that her husband was cool with it. Or I thought, I've never seen this TV show where a husband is helping his wife seduce somebody. But because they're both artists, they kept, saying, well, his responses to us are art. And at some point, Chris looked at her letters and said, these aren't letters, this is a book. I'm not crazy, I'm not obsessed with this man. I'm a writer, and this is my writer's voice. And that's really what I Love Dick is about.
Yeah, you're not going to see that on CSI Miami.
Not much.
No. Do you imagine working for Google or others or Apple over time? Or
Working for Google, maybe starting my own Google. I don't know.
Right.
Topple and Google sound alike.
But working for other internet companies.
I'm excited to work for anybody. I do have really big ambitions because I think about systems, and I think about mythology, and I think about revolution. And I love how television has become, as Jeff said, storytelling is a great way to change hearts and change minds, change the culture, which changes laws. And it happened quickly. My parent came out 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I was on the receiving end of a phone call where I was pretty freaked out. And I thought, I don't really understand what my dad is saying. And I don't know what this means.
And now you've monetized it beautifully.
Well, not just monetized, but my Mappa, as we call her, which is a name we got from the TV show, was in town this weekend, and we had her 80th birthday party, and really celebrated her, and celebrated her with the community of Transparent. And she said, did you invite Caitlyn Jenner? And I said, I should have. But Caitlyn Jenner said to me, watching Transparent with my family really helped me to see that a family could have somebody come out and survive. And so to look at what's happened in 4 years simply around trans issues, going from a moment where I got a phone call and said, I'm a little freaked out, I'm gonna write to deal with my anxiety, which is an amazing moment for an artist where you go, I'm writing my way into a reality that will make me feel better right now. And to be able to offer that to our own family as a holder for, okay, here we are, let's look at ourselves in this art to make sense of what's happening. And 4 years later, to have created a place of empathy and love around trans people within your family and the world. The speed of that.
And brought to you by a shopping company online.
And yes, you can purchase. There's an episode coming up in season 4 called Standing Order, where the Pfeffermans have a standing order at the deli. I want delis to be able to deliver the Pfefferman while you're watching it.
Okay, see?
You could press a button and you could have the exact same lox and bagels at your door within an hour, which I feel like Amazon can do, right? There's a robot out here that.
Well, you're deep in it. You're deep in it with Jeff. So why don't you ask?
Okay, I will.
All right, questions from the audience, please. Questions? Questions? None?
No questions.
No questions. Come on, men, women.
Do you want me to get up and stand like a patriarchal privileged man again? Happy to do my.
There's one.
Hi, Jill.
Hi.
You're amazing. I think
you.
you're funny. It's a tough crowd. You should definitely take the stock because, no, seriously, because you're probably the most prominent person representing the trans community. Yes? Right? So you need to have more money.
Okay.
Because then you'll rule some stuff.
Okay.
So get the stock.
Okay.
Hoard as much money as you can.
Okay. Hoard money.
And give people you care about power.
Okay.
That's how it works.
I will.
See you later.
Thank you. Hi, Megan.
Hello, Jill. Nice to see you. On the money stuff, by the way, Leanne Pittsford, who started Lesbians Who Tech, founded it because during the Prop 8 battle, she found that gay men couples versus gay female couples were giving 6 times the volume because they had access to so much more money.
Wow.
It was so interesting to see the pay gap be so visible in that. And so she founded Lesbians Who Tech, who now is 25,000 people. It's a modern Ziff Davis. I just wanted to thank you for your work. When I worked for President Obama as the United States Chief Technology Officer, and one of the greatest things we need to do as a country is mobilize the talent, because there's so much talent. I was just in Appalachia with coal miners graduating from Code Boot Camp in Painesville, Kentucky. 1,000 coal miners tried for those 50 slots. We're not doing WeWork in the brick buildings in West Virginia, but we could. So working on that kind of stuff. And one of the things I really believe will help us all is if all of us start telling better media of everybody, Hidden Figures, the Hokulea. Moana is real. The Hokulea has sailed around the planet, a Polynesian sailing vessel. They'll be home on the 17th of June. So there really are 20-something Moana men and women who've learned Polynesian sailing arts. So telling these amazing stories, and it's so interesting to see that there's so much of what's working that's not on TV. The Sunday morning shows are just all admiring the problem all day. But we never heard about the coal miners. So just thoughts about that. And if you ever go to polygraph.cool/films, you can see the film dialogue. And it's really astonishing, even in the children's television. It's the language, men speak, women don't. We learn that, and then when we grow up, we do the same. I think it's 8-to-1 speaking lines for women versus men in most films in the Bechdel test. So what you're doing is so important. And I actually think as a chief technology person, the lift that you're doing on behalf of all of the talent and unlocking the talent of what we could all be, how we can be more authentically true, will really change the world and the economy and who feels more creatively confident about the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you.
Hey, Jill. Megan talked about sort of the representation in front of the screen. I'm curious behind the screen. You talked about the DGA getting some trans people, and I'm curious, in tech, there's a few prominent trans people who've transitioned, but it's still really hard for people that are just coming up that are non-binary or trans to get that first job. Is that still a big problem in Hollywood, or are you seeing that change?
Yeah, it's a huge problem. I mean, we have to work with our people on the show who are really involved in making sure we have more trans people. We have to do person to person. We have to find that trans person, introduce them to a department head, get them in that job, keep an eye on them, give them feedback, make sure things are working. That's the way we're doing it right now, is just trying to stay connected to each hire and get these people into these positions, because it's really, I think not only do you have to be able to keep an eye out for trans people you want to hire, but you also have to be willing to turn down your friends and your friends' kids. If you're a white guy who went to Yale, you're going to get an email from your buddy who said, my son just got out of college, can you give him a job? And you're going to have to say no. Yeah. And then you're going to have to see that guy at a barbecue over the weekend and know that you didn't help your friend's son. And that's a really hard ask. I think most white people would say, well, I will get to it. I will get to hiring people of color, but in this case, I actually do want to help out my friend's daughter. Most white people would say that. I'm guilty of that. Most women will say, well, she's a woman, so she's white, that's enough. Or there are ways in which you can think you're taking care of diversity, but you're still really leaving out trans people. You're leaving out trans people of color. You're leaving out queer people. So it has to be an active
feedback too, and keeping it not just hiring, but
yes, keeping an eye on people and making sure things are working for them. So yeah, it has to be more than just sort of a diversity program, but it has to be an overwhelming, active push.
Absolutely.
Thank
you. Very briefly, Karen.
I just want to say, first of all, you're brilliant, and I love Transparent.
Thank you.
One thing that you might think about with Topple is not just supporting actors and directors and producers, but also some of the money that you make goes back to nonprofits and to people that are also doing the advocacy. But I also just want to ask you a really personal question. When I've watched Transparent, it's as much about trans issues as it is about a Jewish family. How much of your family is reflected into the characters?
A little bit. I mean, you know, my mom's a little bit like Shelley, and my Mapa's a little bit like Maura, and I have a sister named Faith, and she's, you know, we're a little reflected. I mean, to me, it just feels like quite an honor to have the kind of creative freedom that allows me to make such a Jewy show.
That's true.
It's not just trans, it's Jewish.
It's Jewy.
It's really
delicious Jewy transness on display for 230 countries.
On that note, Jill Soloway.
Thank you.